do you have any sort of predictions to where you see the future? Where do you think we're going from here? Where's the next generation go?
It's all a good question. So, I don't have a crystal ball. Those technologies will keep changing. I think AI is nowhere the end of where it is today. That's going to get better. It's going to get faster. It's going to make the world better. I think to some extent that's a philosophical question.
All right, hello everyone. This is SDCS. We are San Diego's tech incubator for college students studying computer science and engineering. We're currently live out of Miramar College. We are joined with none other than Dr. Laurent Scahres. I met Dr. Laurent at a IEEE conference at OFC, Optical Fiber Conference. Is that what it was called?
I think it stands for Optical Fiber Communications and Networking Conference, if you really take it. Yeah.
So I was paired up with Dr. Schares as him being a mentor in a mentorship program. And I was able to talk to him, and I was really interested in what he was doing. And I hadn't really known a whole lot about fiber optics before talking to him. So great to have you on the podcast. I'm joined with next to me, my vice president and co-host. Go ahead and introduce yourself. How do you like?
Hi, my name is Victor. Victor Schares. So first question is, what got you into physics, Dr. Laurent?
Well, thanks. First, let me thank you very much for having me here. So always happy to talk to younger kids and pass on a little bit of what I'm doing. I haven't done that many podcasts, so it's kind of a first for all of us here, at least for me. But yeah, so very happy to be here. Thanks again for the invitation. What got me into physics? Good question, right? So I think it's been a long time ago. I would say a couple of reasons. Probably in high school, I had a very, very exciting physics teacher. It's motivating. It's very chaotic. It's not like very structured, but what we did is like, a lot of experiments, lots of hands-on stuff, building new things. And I remember back at that time in high school, we built the first weather station there. We had like some, there was, beginning of the 90s or something like this. There were, some desktop PCs and all that stuff, but, way before internet, anything. We got some sensors, we put something up on the roof of the school, and we figured out how to get those data from those sensors, meteorological sensors, down to a computer, and then find a way to plot them, whatever software was exciting there. Yeah, so I think I would say it was not just, go to page 3 and then page 70 and page 75 of the book and just read it like this. No, I think it was a lot more exciting. It was a lot more hands-on. And yeah, so I think that got me excited for the topic. Now, did I want to do physics, or I knew I wanted to do something with technology, whether it was physics or math or engineering, I wasn't really sure. So finally, the college I got accepted at, they had a dual math physics program, and I say, okay, maybe I'll try both and then see what I like. Right? So that's how I got started. Now, the beginning, I got like a reality check pretty quickly. So I think maybe in high school you're pretty good in math or so. Now you see, okay, there are a lot of guys that are a lot better than you. And the math was not just like, simple calculus or stuff like this, but it was like pretty tough pretty quickly. And I said, are you really cut out for this? So, but, I think that's an early experience. And once you go through that, then, I think you figure out what you like. That's as much for getting me started, right?
So you mentioned kind of a reality check. I'm wondering, just at that point, I kind of experienced the reality check every semester, once or twice, or maybe every single day. I'm wondering, like, is there any way you kind of just go through that? Is it just by just slowly going on, or is it trying to go above and beyond outside of the classroom, or what makes it to where you can kind of maintain a sort of confidence level to where you're like, I want to still keep doing this instead of trying to give up?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, right? I think a lot of us go through that phase at some point, and some these phases come and go throughout. I think at the very high level, I think everybody's different. Everybody's got to figure out what works for them. I think what you figure out pretty quickly, first, you need to be serious and take your stuff and focus on your job at hand, what you have to do. But second, also, you can't do that nonstop. Maybe you can, do one all night or something like this the day before a test or so, but you're not going to keep going like that. It's a marathon at the end of the day. And if you can sprint the first 100 yards or maybe even 400 yards or something like this, but you're not going to keep that pace, right? So I think you got to figure out what keeps you going, what motivates you. Do you really want to do that? And then also, structure and organize yourself. I think sometimes also people say, perfect is the enemy of good, right? So don't try to be perfect. Try to do what you can, but still get your sleep, still keep your mental health, do some sports, go out with your friends, keep some social life, right? So I think all of those are important. But that, of course, said, you also got to put in the work, right? So, and at some point, if you see, it's really, really too hard for you, it doesn't keep you going well, then it might be time that, you to figure out maybe other things that you're more interested in, right? So, and I think that decision is different for everyone.
So obviously you finished your physics degree, and so after schooling, where does this lead you? What was your first industry experience?
It's a good question. So let me maybe take a step back. I think what third year of college or undergrad, pretty much I figured out, well, optics or photonics, something like this is exciting again, because I had a very exciting teacher at that moment. So then you take more classes in that direction, and so more, optics, lasers, photonics, and all that stuff, what I thought was interesting at the time. That was also right around the end of the 90s, just before the dot-com boom. Everybody was hype about all these internet, these cool technologies. So so that was one factor, kind of wanted to explore a little bit more, stay in that field instead of totally changing, right? The other thing is at the end, so I did my schools in Europe, and there's a lot of exchange programs there where, you kind of spend one semester or even a full year at a different college in a different country. And I took full advantage of that, because I think, first it broadened my horizon. Second, it helped me learn languages. And third, you meet new people, new experiences, just getting out of your day-to-day routine. So I spent time at two different places in Scotland and in France. So my undergrad was in Switzerland, but, went to Scotland and France for a while. And then, there I met, an advisor, especially in France, to say, what you want to do. You want to stay here maybe for a PhD or something like this. But at the same time, also my advisor back from Switzerland, from that college, so kind of reached out to me, we have a position open here. You want to stay for a PhD. So I was, weighing a little bit both. You want to go to industry, or you want to stay, maybe dig a little bit deeper into the field. I finally say, okay, let's do the PhD. It's an exciting field. I want to go a little bit deeper. So that took me then another couple of years, right? So, 3, 4, 5 years, depending on what you count exactly there. Then, so I think that was then, undergrad, next grad school. So after grad school, that was around 2003, the dot-com boom totally bust. So everything with internet, with, fiber optics and fast communication, say, as high as it was before, as low it went right now. So not a lot of jobs around it. Right? So what do you do now, right? So you're specialized in this field. It's kind of exciting. And so then what I did, applied for a few places, but I think the one thing that really got me most excited is IBM, where I work right now. So they have a research lab in Switzerland, in Zurich, which is, they have a relationship with the school that I went to. And I knew one of the researchers there. So I contacted him saying, okay, not much out here. Do you happen to know anything in that area? So I'm working, say, not in our lab, but just right what you're doing. I know that the people in IBM New York, the East Coast, in their research labs, they have an opening for a postdoc position in that field. So I would be interested. So funny, I was weighing it. Well, New York is far away, and you really want to go there. But I say, okay, well, they're paying for your interview, so you might as well. Worst case, you get a trip to New York, right? So, and then, I think finally I got hired there, and then it goes step by step, and it's kind of getting my first experience here. Long-winded answer. Hope that's okay.
So how long have you been working at IBM?
I started in 2004, so 19 plus years right now.
What do you say would be the biggest difference between maybe the research that you were doing in academia and your PhD, and how does that differ from private industry at IBM?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. So I think at the end of the day, we all want to develop technology that makes the world better or improve some functions of us. And, my direction was both in PhDs and also at work is, sense better connectivity between the people, right? So at the physical layer, how you make your networking faster, especially your cabling and the optics in between that part, how to make that faster. Now, personally, I believe that there are different parts of the ecosystem that are important there. There needs to be, some more far out research that's typically done more in academia. That's very risky. That doesn't always give you good results. But, if you don't explore new concepts, then you also will not find anything new. If you explore with a very high risk profile, well, this may be working, right? So you're going to fail very often. But the one breakthrough might really, really be the real cool thing. So that's often the role of academia, taking very high risk, further out concepts, right? The next step often goes then, either startups in industry or even big companies in industry that that look at, well, what's the research that's being done there? Are there anything promising? Let's build on it. And let's not do it at the level of, say, 1 or 2 PhD students, but with a larger team, with also more money in it, so more resources type of thing. The thing is, you already made some kind of selection there. Maybe not the highest amount of risk that you're going to take, but a little bit less risk, right? So I want to have a reasonable chance that at least some of the projects I'm taking on with more resources are going to be successful. And then I think that's on the industrial research side or the early stage development thing. Then, at the end of the day, in industry, you want to come up with a product, right? So you got to sell something. You're in a for-profit business, and you've got to make sure that you're able to sell something, right? So some of the projects will not be successful. Hopefully, many will be successful, and you will be able to sell them down the road. So I would say there are different two things between academia and industry in that sense. Academia has the freedom to look a little bit further out and take more risky things. On the other side, industry maybe a little bit less risky, more resources, but you're also under pressure to kind of come up really with a product that you're able to sell at the end of the day. If that kind of makes sense.
What has been more enjoyable between the two?
I don't know. So I think I like both sides. And, and IBM and some of these big industrial research centers, they have some amount of researchers that look pretty far out, that maybe don't need to deliver next quarter, but you have a couple of years or so. So it's somewhere in between. I think everybody has, some people like the stuff that's further out there. Some people say, I want to have a product in my head that I develop right now. And other people, say, I want to take the product and I want to sell it or market it, right? So I think you need all those roads to a certain extent. For me, I think I'm actually pretty happy to kind of look at the technologies that are out there and then take them to the next stage, free product type of thing, and getting them onto a roadmap where you can get something out. So I'm pretty happy with the current roads in that sense. But again, everybody's different. I think you've got to find your roads there.
So optical networking is something that a lot of people that are using it legitimately don't know that it exists, but most data communication can't be run without it because of the amount of it being prominent in data centers. How would you kind of explain simply what does optical networking do that allows people to send data across different servers and across the internet?
Yeah, so obviously, I think the things that everybody sees today is just wireless, right? You have your phone here or something, and the data comes in wireless. You don't need a cable for that stuff, right? So, but that's what I call kind of the thin pipes. It's easy to get small amount of data in there, even streaming videos, but you're not going to do very high-end gaming where you really need to have very high-intensive graphics or whatever on your phone just because you don't have the network bandwidth to do that, right? So what I would say, and another example probably that people know is, fiber to the home. Some people have internet through fiber coming in the home, which often gives you faster connections than if you go over Wi-Fi. It might change with the next generation of Wi-Fi things, but essentially fiber optics, optical networking gives you bigger pipes. If you talk in terms of plumbing type of thing, if you come into the house, you come with, a lot of a big pipe with the data coming in. Or if you come into, I don't know, a school or, something like this, they don't have small, pipes like houses, but much bigger ones because you have a huge amount of need for water type of thing in this case, right? Same for internet, right? So, but once you go in there, you're not going to each individual, outlet with this big pipe. You just need to have a little bit something. So you spread it thinner, and the spreading thinner is what wireless is really good at, Wi-Fi and all that stuff, right? So, but the big pipe delivery, into your house or even further out there, into your city, into your country, cross oceanic distances, you can't do that Wi-Fi. You can't do that wireless, right? So you need to have cables, and you need to have, low loss cables that give you very high amount of data to distribute that. And that's where fiber optics shines, I would think. So you could say in the past that was maybe copper cables. Now copper cables are not doing very well at long distances, not doing very well if you need to shuffle around a huge amount of data. I think that's where glass fiber is really shining for this very big amount of data, distributing them. And then once you go into your house, into your building, you go Wi-Fi today pretty much, unless you have a really high-end application like gaming or I don't know, whatever you guys into, right?
And so that is what you're currently researching, right?
Yes. So yes and no. So fiber optics or optical networking, I think the initial applications really started at the large distances. How do you get data from, say, I think the first fiber cables were pretty much deployed between the US and Europe. Come off the US East Coast, you have a big fiber cable, you put it into the Atlantic, You come out somewhere in the UK or in the Netherlands, wherever, and then from there on you distribute it, right? So for those big distances, I think that's where the first fiber cables went in, probably as early as 40 years ago, something like this, if I got my dates right. Now, I think as data rates went up and the amount of data that we're consuming go up, internet and gaming and AI right now, so those distances go down. And what you're seeing, especially, since the advent of the cloud, cloud computing came up maybe 15, 20 years ago, and it's been ramping a lot. And, last couple of years, AI, of course, is even taking more over. A lot of those data are stored and processed in big data centers. And big data centers are, you can imagine, like, size of multiple football fields type of thing, full of servers type of thing. They need to be connected together. And the distances are, on the order of, up to a mile, yards to miles type of thing, that type of reach. And to connect all these high-end servers together, you actually have a lot of fiber optics in those big cloud data centers, or even, the AI data centers today that power the ChatGPTs and the BARTs of this world, right? So I think this technology that initiated more in telecommunications distances, very long distances, are really right now in the AI supercomputers and in cloud data centers as well. And that's kind of, I think to go back to your question, that's what we're working on. So clouds, IBM has some clouds. We're working on next generation AI infrastructure. And, one thing is how fast your GPUs and your processors are, but second thing is how you can connect those together, right? So I think that we have over networking, and, fiber optics plays a big role in there. And that's what I'm working on.
So you mentioned a lot about AI. I'm just curious, where does AI come in terms of the technology you guys are using to create the next generation? Obviously, fiber optics is used to be able to carry that much bandwidth. That has to be, with the data sets. Where are you using AI in your work, if you are at all? Does it come in as a tool that you use?
So I think it's multiple roles. I think one thing that I kind of alluded to in the previous question is the infrastructure, which is kind of, we're building the computers and the servers and the networking to enable an AI. To actually, AI is, some software platform, but it needs to run on some hardware systems, right? On servers and GPUs and accelerators and all that stuff. So I think that's the lowest level of the food chain, I would say. That's where, we're working on, at least in the teams and the departments that I'm working on enabling the infrastructure to make AI faster, more efficient, better, but essentially building the infrastructure where it's going to run on top of it, right? Second thing, AI can be useful as well, of course, right? So, there's a lot of risks at it. We can all talk about that maybe later in this podcast or outside of it. A lot of risks with it, but also potentially a lot of benefits with it. If I say, for example, in optical networking or in networking generally, often what you have, you have so many data and logs that come in there, especially in a system with, thousands of servers or something like this, right? Something is always going to fail somewhere, right? So, and you want to track all of those data. Is this cable down? Is that GPU on that server down? Is a memory module failing there? Is the switch ports not working? Is the power supply not working? And I think finally you have so many data there, and that's where AI can kind of come in if you have a good model to understand, well, where are the data? How can I process them? How can I put them in a model that allows me to predict where can I expect the next failures, and be easier, be faster, be easier to remediate that failure stuff. If you're able to predict it through some predictive features, machine learning, artificial intelligence, I think that's where AI can be really, really helpful in making things more efficient, right? Of course, there are risks there as well. At that level, I think it's mostly beneficial, I would say. On the personal level, right, so I think AI has been used already for coding, or for syntax of codes. If you say you want to write something in C or Python, which I know reasonably well, but you have another language that you need to code up something quickly, but you don't know the syntax so well, right? I think you can kind of do the descriptive things that you do in the ChatGPTs or the BARTs or the similar tools, right? So that helps you with the syntax in a sense. I think you still need to do the thinking by yourself to a large extent, at least right now. What's the structure of the software, of the program that you want to do? But if you don't know the syntax, I think for that it's already pretty good. It's kind of an spell checker, that will, a little bit better than that. So I think these are just 3 examples across the food chain where AI can be helpful. But there are many, many others, right? Maybe one thing as well I want to say at the IBM side, where we're pretty important on is that is governance of AI. I think you don't want to train your AI systems on data that are out there that violate somebody's rights. Right? So I think there's been a lot of cases about artists complaining about their style being copied because the AI models got trained on those images from that artist, and they say, no, I don't like that, I'm going to sue this AI system, right? So I think especially as somebody like IBM, where we're trying to sell software to other companies, we got to make sure that we stay on the safe side of how we train that, and we don't violate any property rights in that sense. So I think that's where the things get more in the gray zone. So I think you can say you have a potential good benefit, but you're also going to make sure that whatever you train that benefit on is really foolproof, and it doesn't violate anybody else's rights. So I think there's a whole ecosystem of questions that need to be tackled at some point there.
This is more of a personal question for me, and I was wondering if the over-reliance on these tools, if they're going to make it so future engineers would be how would I say this? Less skilled, or basically how can these tools help future engineers compared to all the previous generations of engineers?
Yeah, so I think I know where you're going. I don't think so. I think don't see that human intelligence as a broad kind of goes down just because the tool gets used, right? I think people complained about electricity first coming in, and then kind of tractors replacing horses, and calculators replacing manual processing of your things. I think back in the 70s, a lot of the math teachers in school said, well, kids have calculators right now. They don't learn how to calculate anymore in their heads, right? So are we any dumber for that reason? No, I think it's a helpful tool in that sense. I think who's complaining right now at the level is, probably more the English teachers or so, because people can write their essays with ChatGPT, even if it's not perfect yet, but it will get better, right? So, but I think then you need to know the basics in a sense. But I think tools are there, in my opinion, to be used as well. If they're permissible, if they don't violate anybody's rights, if they're ethically and all that stuff, if they're good, you might use them and do something faster. Same thing for GPS in the cars, right? So I think when I learned to drive, everybody had the paper maps, and so if you go to a new place, you got to orient yourself. Maybe it's better for your sense of orientation if you know how to do that. But I didn't know how to read the stars anymore, right? To orient myself before the paper maps were there, right? So, and today everybody uses the GPS, right? So, okay, maybe you are worse in reading the stars today, but I think we can maybe do other things more efficiently and get faster to that point and use our energy or creative energy for new things, right? So maybe a very broad answer. So broadly, I think that the tools are not necessarily bad, but it always, depends on how you use them. I think if you, you can use, probably some advanced AI tools right now to write you the code for your next test or so. Is that going to be speeding you up right now? Yes. Are you learning really the lessons to be successful later on? If you don't understand the basics, probably not, right? So I think you still need to put in the effort. But the question is, are you going to use the tools that are available to you, as long as you're allowed to use them, and make the best use of them, or you're trying to reinvent the wheel, right? So, but yeah, you're going to compete against everybody else out there as well. And if everybody else understands the basics and you don't understand them, just because you wanted to just learn for the test right now, well, that's a different problem. But I think tools are there, but you still got to put in the effort yourself.
So you spent your career doing science and physics and engineering. How are those lenses or views on reality important? Because I feel like a lot of people kind of get daunted away by how hard it is or how abstract a lot of the concepts in math or physics are. Why do you think it's important, despite the hardships, to be a physicist or scientist or engineer?
Tell me one job that's easier. What do you think is easier?
One job?
Or a task that you say, you guys are studying engineering in some shape or form, right? So why didn't you choose anything else?
I would say the reason I chose it was because it allowed me to be able to be creative in a way that wasn't just abstract. And if you have creativity and you want to use it, and you don't have kind of a understanding of how things work in reality or how they're built, then the best you can do with your creativity is be an artist. And I am an artist, but I would like to take that sort of expression to the next level.
I think that's a good answer. Then let me ask one more follow-up question, and I'm going to chime in. Do you perceive this as a hardship, what you're doing right now?
I'd say it's definitely challenging. On a daily basis with all the coursework and stuff, at least I know we often find ourselves stuck on certain things. But at the end of the day, at least for me, I wouldn't do anything else if I'm given the option to. So it's sure it's not easy, but it's what I want. What we want.
You can say if it were easy, everybody else could do it too, right? But again, I think it's got to be something that somehow at some level keeps you going, right? So I think it's not the 100-yard sprint race, but it's the marathon in a certain sense, right? Not in a bad sense, but I think, the way is essentially the goal, right? To get there. If you don't, there's always moments you don't like, right? So I have that daily, right? So there's some tasks you really don't like to do, right? But that's part of it, right? So I think there's the good moments and the bad ones. But I think on average, you got to work in an anaerobic field, mode type of thing, not just like, exhaust your muscles in the anaerobic mode, then you get in trouble. As long as you're aerobic, you're good type of thing. Does it keep you going on a broader field? Do you think you make something useful, something that's meaningful, and you feel that you're reasonably skilled, maybe not the best one in the world at it, but can you do your job? Can you do it well? Sure, then it's the right thing. And I think I like it broadly. Would there be other things I would like to do? Probably too, right? So at some point, I think, you'll pick your battles and you can't do everything. Rather do some things well than try to do everything kind of so low, right? So maybe more philosophical answer, but, I think it's not a yes and a no answer in a certain sense, right? I think if you really have at some point the feeling, well, it really burns me out, right? So I think then you got to think a little bit harder about it. But if you're reasonably excited about it and you think you're doing something meaningful, yeah, why not, right?
And so obviously a lot of people in our club are interested in going into these fields of science and engineering. And you being someone that has many, many years of experience in these fields, what would you say is the most valuable trait, or what skills should we try and cultivate to be successful in these fields?
Also a broad question. I think there's not only one, right? So I think one thing is curiosity, being inquisitive, liking to ask questions. Why does this work? Why doesn't it work? Do I really want to create something, or in that sense? The second thing is, again, curious. I think about the technology, but also about the world at large, right? So I think, where do you see problems that don't work well today that you could improve in one sense or another, right? So make something better in society or engineering level, or technology. Can you improve something, and would you be excited to do that, right? And the third thing is also, and I think there the jury is a little bit out on it, but collaboration, being able to work together with other people. I mean, some people are successful in doing really things by themselves, but I think the vast majority of the people are probably better in a team. Everybody has some pros and some talents and some cons. How you integrate, how you work across the borders there, that type of thing. I think that's an important thing too. But first thing is, I think, curiosity. And of course, you got to have the basics at some point. So try to do well on your tests if you can. Put in the basics. You need to have the basic understanding. And then, open yourself up, look left, look right, where are the problems? Is there something that you might think you could do better in a sense? So, would you be excited to do that, or say, no, I'd rather use it, right? So, but I don't want to put in the effort, right? So I think, yeah. So I think there are multiple factors there.
What was your first experience with a computer?
That's a good one. So probably in high school, the end of middle school, beginning of high school, around that time, we didn't have a computer at home. But one of my friends, probably I was around freshman year or so, they had a computer. And I think there was an old x86 at the end of the 80s, something like this. Only text-based terminals, no internet, no nothing, no Windows environment or GUIs or stuff like this, just text-based type of thing. So I think I was thoroughly unimpressed at that moment, actually. But then, so I think the next step is like when I mentioned this type of weather stations experiments in high school that we did. So we did some basic coding there, how to read in data, process them, very, very simple thing. I think that was a little bit more exciting to me. And then at home, at some point, I think I got a very old Amiga or Atari computer, which long gone. I don't know, for old gamers my age type of thing, they know all of those things. So I did a little bit of gaming at home type of thing. It was way before the internet and all that stuff. But then also my dad asked me sometimes, well, I have some paperwork to do. You write the letters for it. get your printer as well. So okay, then do the basic word processing and all of that type of things. And but at the time there was, internet we didn't have until I went to college. And there, got my first emails, and got a lot more people who were excited about this technology. But I often saw it more as a means than as a goal as itself. I'd say computers or internet. So what can you do with them? Sort of thing. How can you use them? How can you make them better and faster, maybe as well? But not as a goal in itself.
So you kind of saw life before computers, and then you saw the coming of the internet. I would say I sit where there has not been a time in my life where I knew a life without a computer. Do you ever think about kind of where computers in the broad sense are going in the future? I know we have ideas now like that seem kind of comical, but like the metaverse or augmented reality or computers that aren't here but kind of on your face or whatever. Do you have any sort of like predictions to where you see the future? Are we always going to be doing a keyboard and mouse, or where do you think we're going from here? Where's the next generation go?
It's all a good question. So I don't have a crystal ball, right? So otherwise, I think we'll all be good, right? So I don't know. So I think computers and mouse and even a headset or something like this, that's just an IO device. I think I can talk to my phone, right? So that's also an IO, an alternative to computer or mouse. Those technologies will keep changing. The computers will go faster. Of course, AI is, and I think AI is nowhere at the end of where it is today. That's going to get better. It's going to get faster. It's going to make the world better. I think to some extent that's a philosophical question, right? So I think there will be tools, that will be useful cases. Not everything will be better. What I can say for myself is I'm trying to have downtime outside of the computer. So got to get your work done and all that stuff, right? And often do that on evenings and the weekends as well if needed, right? That type of thing. But at some point you need to be able, at least for myself, to get away from the screen, even if it's just for hours. The night my phone is off, right? So it will not be touched, right? And I will also, and I'm enforcing that with my kids as well, middle school and high school freshman type of thing, which are even younger than you, but totally growing up with computers and would do as much as you let them, right? So, but I think, my opinion, there's got to be a world outside of computers. You're living in a real world. Not everybody's a nerd. A lot of people aren't excited and addicted to it and all that stuff. And there's good things, but I think you got to be able to interact with people outside of that world as well. Right? So I think social media, there's a lot of good things about it, but there's also dangers, like addictions and all that stuff, right? So as we all know, right? So I think everything in mediation is, things good. Where the world is going, so IO devices, it's speech recognition, all that stuff has been there. Maybe eye recognition will come more. Maybe some people are thinking about intercepting your thinking. Skeptical about that, and hopefully it's not going too far predicting you. But then I think generally the AI field is nowhere at the end of this role, right? So yeah, technology will keep evolving, and I think we'll probably be surprised what's out there in 20 years. When you're my age or something, will be totally different, I guess. So I think in the near term, my thinking, in the near term, we always overestimate the progress that's being made in technology. So I think next year the mouse will still be the same, and then the keyboard and that stuff, and in 3 years as well. But what's in 20 years? In the long term, often progress is underestimated, because we're kind of extrapolating linearly. So okay, then this step and this step, this step. But sometimes something new comes. Internet came, cloud came, Wi-Fi, mobile phone came, right? So smartphones, AI comes, right? So, and every time that's kind of a step change, and things totally change, right? So that's more difficult to predict on a linear scale. So I think things will keep evolving to some extent, but there will also probably be bigger changes that I don't know about. Right? You tell me in 20 years. So actually, that's an interesting thing. Let me just tell you very quickly about that, and then we can move on. When I was your age, I was participating in an essay contest. The title was "The World of Technology 25 Years from Now." So write an essay of, I don't know, 5 or 8 pages or something like this. Do your best prediction of how you imagine the future 25 years from now. Maybe do that. Maybe initiate it with your club or something like this. And then go back later on and see what you got. So.
Do you ever work with students that are PhD students, or do you kind of just stick with the people that are working at IBM? Do you have, because you're working with us right now, do you have any sort of like mentorship you're doing outside of
our part?
Yeah. So no, thanks for the question. I like that actually. Yeah. So we do at work multiple levels here probably. So at work we do have internship programs where we take in interns, typically 3 months over the summer break or something like this. Many of them are grad students, second year PhD, third year PhD or something like this. We also do have undergrads positionings. So and most of the big tech companies do that. So often the the sites open up right around this time, or maybe October, November-ish. Go to those websites, look for internship positions if you're interested. I like that a lot. First, as a way, to get, to convey knowledge and working methods and all that stuff to new people. Second, also to get, fresh ideas or fresh ways of thinking in it. For somebody who hasn't really been that deep into the field, often asks the right questions. They may be sounding simple at the beginning, but often, if you ask me a question, I got to think, why didn't we think it at that simple level right through it? So I think there's multiple benefits there, right? So, so it's training. It's also getting some, relatively simple jobs for us done by interns, but it's the interaction. I think that's very fruitful in both directions, right? So, other than that, outside of the internship programs, I do some amount of mentoring. So you've seen Jeremy last year, like for the conferences. Often when you go to a conference, what they're doing right now, scientific conferences, they're pairing more senior people with, newcomers in the field, and just trying to create, this food chain and relationships, and so also kind of giving our best knowledge and ways of working, passing them on to the next generation. So I'm trying to do that when I can, and then also, and that's probably even a level below you. Mentoring high school kids or middle school kids. I'm kind of involved in some of those programs too, coaching them for some STEM programs, things like that.
So we have most of our students are in San Diego, if not all of them, and that's where I met you. So I was wondering, what do you think of San Diego? You like it over here, or do you like New York? Do you like Switzerland, or what are your thoughts of San Diego?
I love it. I kind of get to go there most years. I'd say 1 week for this OFC conference, which often happens to be in San Diego. It's often in March when the weather here at the East Coast is cold. Still in San Diego, it's nice and warm. Love it. So totally good impression about that. That being said, I've lived in a number of places through my life. At some point, you find every place has its good things and not so good things. So San Diego, I haven't found anything bad yet, because I always just go for a week, right? So once you live in a place, I think it's like, what you don't like there, right? So, but I think they're good. I love San Diego. It's been mostly vacation/work thing for me. New York has different attributes than say Switzerland or Europe, or different places where you can be. I think often it's more like, where's your social circle, where are your friends, where are your families, what you value in life, type of thing. That's probably where you get stuck a little bit, or stay maybe a little bit longer, or you have a job or something like this, right? So, and I think as long as you're young, maybe another thing, explore. I was traveling during college times as much as I could, partially doing exchange programs and combining kind of work or studying with living in a different place, right? So, and I think that broadens your horizon, gets you an idea of what's interesting and what works for you, essentially. But San Diego, I loved it, right? So it's every year kind of when I go there, yeah, nice, good.
Now, what about the European tech world or tech industry versus the American or North American tech industry? What would you say is the biggest difference? And as a worker, would you say you'd rather work, or anyone who wants to go into the industry, would you say should they want to pursue a career in America or Europe?
Yeah, and I think it's a good question. I think most people want to stay relatively local and kind of in a culture or an environment they like, or they know, where their friends and their families are. Some people like me, move across the borders for, sometimes reasons that are not necessarily rational, right? So I think I mentioned to you, I got this because somebody was looking for a job and somebody mentioned, we don't have anything right here, but go to the US, you have something for a short time. Then I consider that kind of mentally, okay, you go there, explore it, learn it, later you go back to the place right? So things change sometimes, but so I think that's the first thing. Tech industry, I think some industries are stronger in some countries, of course, but I think there's some amount of tech in different flavors everywhere, right? So China is good in different things than US or than Europe in some things, right? So I think if you look at a lot of the big cloud companies, there's more in the US of those than in Europe, but they have subsidiaries in Europe. But if you look like high-end car manufacturers, for example, Germany is very well known for that, right? So does that mean that every American interested in building a car would go to Germany or to Japan or to another car country? Probably not. No, it's, you know, it's not your culture, it's not your friends, it's not your environment. Maybe your degree isn't even recognized. Maybe you don't speak the language and all those type of things. So and I think that's the first fact I would kind of say. There's a lot of good things where you are, or you know, if you like it there. If you're more adventurous or want to explore something or want to go more specific into something, well, some areas might be better for that. Like Silicon Valley is very well known for, you know, the software industry and computer tech generally, right? So, but maybe recently it's been changing also in, you know, autonomous driving and e-cars and all that stuff. But 20 years ago, it was not well known for as a car place, for example, if you want to go there. Or if you're interested in, I don't know, energy or something like this, you know, traditional places like Texas are well known for oil. I think the Midwest, you have wind industry, you know, Arizona, you might have a lot of solar cells right now. And you wouldn't do as much solar cells in Alaska, probably because the sun is just not shining. Well, it's shining a lot in the summer, but in the winter, it's different, right? So, or in a rainy place in that sense. So I think different industries for a number of reasons on different places. But that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody wants to go to that place. So I think you have your own thing that's also important for you, right? So it's your life, right? So, and is that industry more important than your life, or can you combine both together, right? So I think that's a lot of questions that's up to everybody, I think.
I'd say my last question to you is, if you were 20, which I'm 20, what advice would you give to yourself? It could be career advice or life advice, or like what is something that you can hand down to your 20-year-old self?
I don't know. So I think generally, you know, you can't regret your past, right? So I think often you come at the crossroads of a road and you pick one direction, you go that one. Is that one necessarily better than that one? I don't know, right? So at some point you just go there and you find your way, right? So I think there's not only one way to make your way to life. What I would have liked to know, I don't know. I think everybody's got to make their own experiences. Be curious, be the best person, I think, on a moral scale as you can, and you know, I think be open to new experiences in that sense. Put in your effort, but also don't forget to be a person, right? So to have fun, to live, right? So did I all know all of those things, you know, when I was 20? No, I think some experiences you make when you go along, right? So but everybody's got to figure out that by themselves. I think at the end of the day, it comes back much to your moral compass and to developing yourself as a person. I think technical knowledge, I think, always comes and goes, right? So I think that you will know different things in 10 years from now than I know. Mode of life, I think everybody has different interests, and you know, you got to find it out. But I think broadly, you know, be curious, do the best you can, and still be human after that and have fun, right? So don't neglect yourself. So live healthy. I think everybody says that, right? I think the beginning of your 20s, you can eat more burgers than when you come my age or something like this. Yeah, live reasonably healthy if you can. But again, you know, sometimes a burger doesn't kill you either, right? So or beer or whatever, right? So you're not at the drinking age yet, right?
Not in the US, no.
Not in the US, yeah.
Hi, my name is Alex, and I'm studying engineering. And I'm wondering, given another chance, which part of physics would you like to explore more?
In physics itself, or more broadly in technology world?
Like what part of technology, if not fiber optics, would you want to study?
Yeah, so I think what you study now exactly, let me go a little broader and then I'll deep into exactly your question. I think it's a very good question. What you study exactly right now, I think doesn't matter as much as your mindset or what you want to do with it. Because probably what you're learning right now, other than the very basics of it, in 10 years or 20 years will be different. So you got to keep learning new things as you go along anyway. And whether you do electrical engineering right now or, you know, fiber optics or related things, doesn't matter. You know, I think it's different than medicine, of course, right? So, but let's say within the technology world. So I think it's more like your mindset. Are you open? Are you willing to be a lifelong learner and continuing to learn? Then what exact minors you're taking, you know, this semester or so in that sense. I'd say to some extent go by your interests, you know, as long as it's reasonable in the field where you think you can find some work, but it's got to be a little bit aligned to your interest and not just go by what's the hype technology of the day, right? So, because if if you think AI is hype, it gives you a lot of jobs, there are probably millions of other people who think the same thing right now. It's that type of thing. For myself, I was hesitating, especially at your age, between physics and electrical engineering. It's kind of going back and forth there. Should I do more EE type of thing instead of physics? There were a bunch of things that were interested for me there as well, especially power generation, that type of thing, which at that time wasn't so hype or so fancy. But now, of course, with all the renewable energy discussions, and there's a lot of work in that field that's trying to get figured out across different fields. So that was for me, but everybody's different there again. And go a little bit by your interest as well.
And what made you choose this instead of the studying energy?
So fiber optics, I think in my third year, a couple of things probably, and my third year I had a very exciting teacher who made it very interesting, giving practical examples. And, I was always more like, going towards, I want to see an application of this technology in my lifetime or within the next, 5 to 10 years and not beyond it. So in that sense, I was probably less interested in, say, astronomy or stuff like this than in more practical things. That's one thing. Then the second thing was also, general discussions around that time. It was the beginning of the .com boom or so, with a lot of IT and internet companies coming up. So it was hype. Maybe I jumped a little bit on that bandwagon, but I think on the other side, it was also of interest to me, right? So.
Hi, my name is Brian. I'm a computer science major. This is somewhat kind of unrelated to kind of the conversation that you've had so far, but kind of how do you deal with like burnout in a way? Like, have you ever had like moments where you've been like you've been in this field for a long time and are really well experienced, but like have you ever had like burnout or various moments where you're kind of just like, I don't know, like on autopilot, and like what steps or what's your drive to kind of get back and have a more like focused mindset?
It's a very good question. I think it's a very important question that you're asking there as well, right? And I think everybody can get affected by it at some point in their life, whether they are aware of it or not aware of it. I think first thing is like, don't be ashamed of it. If you're ever in that situation, don't be ashamed of it. Be open about it. Try to get help. I think there's anonymous places, there's open places, and I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to generally, right? So I don't know anybody's situations, right? There's don't be afraid. It's a disease, like a physical disease. It's not a stigma. It should not be a stigma at all, right? So don't be afraid. If somebody shields you for that reason, okay, it's not your friend, right? So, but it's your life, right? So that's the first thing. Don't be afraid. Seek help. And then the second thing is like I think I mentioned that before. Don't consider your problems today as something you need to rush, and it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, right? So I think you've got to find something that keeps you going outside of your day-to-day focus. You've got to focus on your problem at hand, but if you really get stuck, zoom out. Everybody has different things. For me, I like to do, volunteering, sports, family, travel. Usually my Sundays I spend on a soccer field, coaching or refereeing youth games, right? So my computer is nowhere near that stuff. I'm running around, good weather, hopefully, or bad weather, but you're in a totally different world, right? So to zoom out, to refresh yourself mentally, right? So physically, of course, but mentally as well. So I think those two things mainly, I would say, it's not a stigma. If you really get stuck at some point, whoever gets stuck, I can give that advice. Speak up, go out there, seek help, right? So anonymous, non-anonymous. And the second thing is, try to find out what keeps you going, what gets you excited. For some people can be party, for some can be music, can be reading, can be sports, can be hanging out, many different things. But I think you got to find that balance between being really serious and focused on what you're trying to achieve, and also being being a human and opening up, having fun. That makes sense.
Yes, thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Blake. I'm a computer science major, and I was just wondering, like when you were younger, getting started out, if you had like a lack of direction you felt, and like how you ended up getting into where you ended up.
Totally. I think that's a very good question as well. Lack of direction. I think that's part of being a student, figuring it out.
Yeah.
Because I think in high school, at least for me, was a lot of hand holding at the beginning. You do this and do this, and you come to your final exam, and now you go off into your own world, and nobody tells you what to do, right? So figuring that out, I think that's, some people figure it out quick. Some people figure it out on the hard way. Everybody needs to figure themselves out in some way. I think there's no one size fits all there. I think try to be by yourself, take some time to zoom out, figure out what you like, what really keeps you going, or what stresses you out, what doesn't keep you going.
Did you
I think professionally then as well, some direction or another, often it's a little bit luck. But I think luck usually comes to the people who put in the effort to some extent. But is it going to be that company or that company or that company? I think that's hard to predict. I think in that sense, the more flexible or adaptive you are, the more open you are to different possibilities, the easier it is. But I think your moral compass can change in a sense, right? And what keeps you going, what triggers you, that type of thing. And I think that's, you can't force it, you can't rush it. Some people, take well beyond their studies to figure out what keeps them going. But yeah, and I think that's part of being a student, right? So coming to a different level of, going away from this hand holding, but now you got to spread your wings and fly yourself, right? So
Thank you.
good luck.
Thanks.
I'm sure you're going to figure that out. The first thing is to ask these questions, and these questions are very good. So
All right, Laurent. Really appreciate you spending your time and speaking with us, giving us life advice and career advice, technical knowledge, your predictions on AI, the history of computers. Really appreciate it. You didn't have to do it. You did me a solid. So really, from the bottom of my heart, really appreciate you doing this for us.
it was a real pleasure to join you. I love doing that. And I think you guys are on a really good track by hosting these type of sessions, by being engaged, by being curious, by being open. So wish you all the best. I'm sure you're going to figure it out. Thank you.
We'll try. And let us know next time you're in San Diego.
Absolutely, I will. Same
right.
for you. If you come to New York area, let me know.
Will do.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.